A poor, majority black city struggling with unsafe water that could poison residents for years to come. Stop me if you've heard this one. As New Yorkers saw subways, roadways, and homes flooded from an extraordinary rain event that dropped more than 8 inches of rain at JFK Airport, down in Louisiana, the state is dealing with the exact opposite problem. Extreme drought has taken hold in and around the whole region, dropping the water level and speed of the Mississippi River with potentially dire implications. This drought may make for a less dramatic video, but it is imminently threatening the city of New Orleans and surrounding areas with a mass poisoning, compromised drinking water, and desiccated crops. So here exactly is what's going on. President Biden has declared a state of emergency for 4 Louisiana parishes near New Orleans as a wedge of salt water travels from the Gulf of Mexico up the Mississippi River, threatening the drinking water supplies for that historic city and for the surrounding areas. Southeastern Louisiana depends on the Mississippi River for its drinking water and does not have expensive reverse osmosis plants in place to remove salt from that supply. Now, typically, the flow of the Mississippi River is strong enough to keep that salt water from the Gulf at bay. But drought throughout the region has left the river several feet below normal and running with a lot less power than it usually does. According to the Army Corps of Engineers, the river needs to flow at roughly 300,000 cubic feet per second in order to overcome the weight of the salt water, which is actually heavier than fresh water. And the most recent reading had the speed at around 156,000 CFS, or roughly half of what is actually required. What's more, there's really no end in sight. Rainfall projections are low for the next several months, and what rain does fall is being sucked up by parched soil before it can run off into the Mississippi River. Experts are preparing for that saltwater wedge to continue its way upstream all the way through January. The New Orleans Times-Picayune has been providing extensive coverage of this threat. Here is their map of where the saltwater wedge is now and where it is projected to be based on U.S. Army Corps of Engineers analysis. So far, the wedge has traveled roughly 70 miles upstream from the Gulf, an underwater levee signified by the yellow triangle you can see there on the map. That was overtopped on September 20th. The saltwater extent is expected to reach New Orleans in mere weeks. Plaquemines Parish has been distributing bottled water to their residents for months and is working feverishly to install reverse osmosis systems at their water plants. Federal government is barging in fresh water to mix into the water supplies to decrease the overall salinity, but they're already warning that these efforts are likely to be insufficient to deal with this threat to the drinking water. And that threat is really quite severe. Obviously, humans cannot drink salt water, but even if that immediate threat to life is mitigated by bottled water, the broader impacts here could be devastating. Farmers depend on water for irrigation, threatening crops and livelihoods. And New Orleans is chock full of lead pipes. They'll be corroded by salt water, potentially leaching lead into drinking water for years to come. This is partly what happened in Flint, Michigan. When they switched water supplies from the Great Lakes to the Flint River, the river had a high degree of salt due to runoff from road treatments. That Flint River water then corroded the lead pipes and poisoned an entire American city as the government engaged in a massive cover-up. And like Flint, New Orleans is struggling with an epidemic of poverty that leaves residents with few resources and no margin for error. A report several years back revealed that a full half of New Orleans residents are struggling to get by, living either in outright poverty or severely cash-strapped thanks to an economy dominated by low-paying service sector jobs. Put it all together, and it is a perfect storm for calamity and human misery, something the residents of New Orleans are sadly already all too familiar with. This is but the latest disaster, triggered by the climate crisis and what now seems to be a near-weekly refrain. Wildfires in Maui, flooding in New York City, extreme drought all along the Mississippi River. Each of these events causing untold suffering, trauma, and expense, each exposing the cracks and the neglect within our society. Disaster capitalism, greedy, neglectful utilities, centuries-old infrastructure, government incompetence, or sheer indifference. Already, we're being trained to grow numb to all of these crises. This year alone, we've had 23 different billion-dollar weather events. That's already more than the previous record, and we've still got 3 more months left to go in this year. So Kyle and I spent part of our honeymoon actually in New Orleans, and it has got to be one of the most unique cities in all of America. The history, the character is extraordinary. And like nowhere else in the country or even the world, the culture and people of New Orleans have also been central to the story of America. Its large population of educated blacks were pivotal in the Civil War, Reconstruction, and in the fight against Jim Crow. Half of the city is also below sea level. And so Crescent City is now locked in an existential struggle for its very existence. The battle against the saltwater is really just the beginning of the problems in this era of climate chaos. And as usual, it will be the poor with no other options who suffer the most. Sagar, this is one that's kind of gone underneath the radar.
Hey guys, if you want to see what I had to say to Krystal's monologue, not just this one, all of them, going back to the very beginning, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com.